Mike, in your opening statement, you said that you felt that your precinct has been underrepresented for 8 years. I'd ask you to expand on that with some examples, and I'll provide Jim an opportunity to respond to that and Ryan to chime in with whatever he'd care to chime in on. So, Mike.
Sure. The third precinct, the current council has been the town councilor for 8 years. In that 8 years, there's been no road improvements. In that 8 years, the town purchased the water department, and now that's the town's obligation to maintain that water department. And I personally called the councilor to complain about the quality of the water, and he failed to call me back. He pitched me to someone in the water department. So, I would ask him to point out specifics besides a couple speed bumps and maybe some regulations that we talked about last time. I shouldn't have to go out looking for what he's done. It should be clear to me, and it's not clear to me, and it's been 8 years, and when I personally call a counselor and he has someone else call back instead of return the call himself, that's problematic for me, and that's what's happened. That's my experience.
Thank you. Jim?
What's the question?
Would you care to respond to what Mike has said?
Certainly. I think, Mike may be right initially that when he called me about the water department issues that he had, I did refer someone immediately from the water department to get a hold of him to make sure that he understood that his issues were being held. But we did spend a lot of time talking on the phone in regards to that issue and or the issues, because I don't necessarily disagree with the issues that he has, because they're real. But I think the one thing that he said that it should well be known is that the water company wasn't owned by the town. And because it wasn't owned by the town, we had to get our hands around it in order to see that improvements would take place. Now, that comes a lot slower than a lot of us would like. But whether it's the new water tower that we've approved money for and set aside, whether it's going to be the chlorination chamber so we're not tasting chlorine every time you drink it and you can't drink that water, those things are happening. But for some people, they're not happening fast enough. People want to see the pipe changed in the ground. They don't want to drink from the asbestos concrete piping longer. But the fact is that those wouldn't even be issues that we could be addressing if it wasn't for the actions of the council in the past. And when we were dealing with private companies, these were issues that were ignored and continue to be ignored. When it comes to constituent services, though, that's one thing I take pride in. I always try to respond to everyone, and if I don't have an issue resolved, I save it on my voicemail here on Town Hall. I do not just neglect it and think that it doesn't happen. I had one instance where someone was complaining about a particular car that was being parked in the driveway. I still have that message, still right there. I have another one where there was some damage on some property caused by the town when they constructed the new pump station. I still have it on mine. When we had the problems with roosters crowing in hyenas, I still have it, because to me, it's not resolved, and the people say that they're resolved just because we wrote an ordinance. Has it been taken care of? And so for me, constituent services is one of the #1 priorities. And so in Barnstable, you talk about roads, but whether it's sidewalks or roads, they're all prioritized by the town. And this town council came up with a plan of action that was being neglected for years, that we would spend over $3 million every year to help improve roads in this town. And all the roads have been prioritized, and when it's time for the roads to be done in Precinct 3, they will be done. Private roads are going to be an issue, and they will continue to be an issue. But I think we've done a good job at addressing what needs to be addressed in this community, and right here in Precinct 3. There are issues still out there. People want to see crosswalks over off of Pitcher's Way and West Main Street.
If you could wrap it up in about 20 seconds.
The topography there doesn't really help that situation from happening and creating a safe intersection. It has to be totally redesigned for it to happen. But we're working on it. We're working on the speed speed bumps on Lincoln Way. Speed's been an issue for years and years. And so we're on top of issues. I want to stay on top of issues for people, and I want to make sure that there's a positive resolve.
Thank you. And responses are now officially on the clock. You have two minutes for each one. Ryan, would you care to respond to anything that either Mike or Jim has said?
I'd just like to add a little thing of my own, I guess. The issues that have been addressed, not saying you haven't done any throughout the 8 years, many issues have come up. Only a couple stick out. More large issues, I would think, out of a counselor that represents their precinct the correct way, larger issues would be more noticeable. I'd just like to let everyone know in my precinct that I will be out there listening, hearing your concerns, knowing what you want have done, and I will do everything in my power as your representative to make sure these things are accomplished and that everything can run smoothly in our town.
Okay, thank you.